Hello, and welcome back to the Skyrim Archaeological Survey. I am joined once again by the magnificent Liv Westring. Hello, Liv.
Hello.
Hello, and today we are going to, well, as the name on the screen implies, Hamvir's Rest. But we're starting out currently looking at a very familiar site, the site of our first ever survey at Dustman's Cairn. Now, Hamvir's Rest is right next to Dustman's Cairn, but this was not an oversight, was it, Liv?
No, we
No,
don't do that kind
no.
of things. Everything we do is completely thought out.
It's systematic, scientific.
You can't there is some value in going back to a place when you have
Oh,
more experience and
yes, that's it.
seeing something nearby.
That's what we're doing. That's exactly what we've been doing,
Exactly.
precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And I just realised I just nibbled on a cake. I'll put the cake down. So,
Please do.
professional. But the point is, though, as with Gandalf, an archaeologist is never late. Frodo Baggins. He arrives precisely when he means to. And we are today arriving at Hamvir's Rest. And there's your loyal steed, the assassin horse.
Yes.
Now, this won't be the longest survey we've ever done. But that said, though, also, I should say, we've had some lovely comments recently, Liv. I don't know if I pointed them out to you. But people have been saying that they like what we're doing and that they essentially want us to continue and all good positivity stuff. So that's good.
Yay.
Yes, obviously they were saying it in much
Nice
nicer ways.
things on the internet.
Nice things on the internet. Nice things. For once. But yes, Hamvir's Rest is a curious little place. First and foremost, because it's basically outdoors. This is not the same as, for example, Dustman's Cairn. And actually, it literally just occurred to me that maybe this contrast is deliberate, because obviously, since we surveyed at Dustman's Cairn, we have learned a bit more about the I suppose the undead structure, the society, almost society that goes on within the tombs in terms of the Draugr and their care of these underground crypts. And also specifically that actually these places are probably places where selected dead are being deposited, either for the purpose of becoming Draugr, or because they are, for example, high dragon priests, or they were high up in Old Norse society, or in this world at least. In this instance, then, I suppose the question is, what does this contrast mean to have these graves out in the open like this? Obviously, they're in a little courtyard, and they were defended. Did you have to combat some undead skeletons, I think? Look
Yes.
at all the
Yes.
bones around.
They did not take to shouting very well.
No. But this is an interesting contrast. But also, obviously, there are also similarities. So, for example, the grave stones, or the headstones, I suppose you could say. Well, they might be footstones. We don't know unless we open up a grave, I guess. But let's say they're headstones. They have beautiful patterns on them, which are similar to the carved patterns that we see in the underground crypts and on the walls. And they're also loosely boat-shaped, are they not?
They are.
Which is a very interesting reference to real world is it early Iron Age Scandinavian practices where you have lots of these in certain places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they stretch out through the Iron Age in general, but...
Well, yeah, but I suppose in terms of the large, there were a couple of very large concentrations. I guess I'm thinking of in particular.
Yes.
Names escape me, but they specifically, what's interesting here then is that this is a very direct reference to our real world Scandinavian archaeology. How do you think that this fits then with what we've learned so far about the old inhabitants of this land, in so much as hitherto we haven't really heard any much about, for example, the idea, I don't know, of the equivalent of a boat burial for kings, for example. That they do have Sovngarde, which is an equivalent of Valhalla. But what do you think about this then, as a series of boats on the ground?
Well, I think it's interesting, especially in the close proximity to Dustman's Cairn, because obviously there is difference between these graves and those graves. Because these aren't the same.
Well, no. Well, and I suppose in particular, these are graves, whereas they are catacombs, I suppose.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And also the fact that we see entombed sarcophagi behind these, like, dirt burials.
Well, now is that a sarcophagus, or is that a table for preparing the dead?
It looks like a sarcophagi.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it hasn't got the corners that the tables tend to have. And interestingly, this is absolutely fenced off. That's not openable. It's essentially an iron gate in the stonework.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
and
also,
they were protected by one Draugr scourge.
Yeah. Oh, there he is. I don't know what. I just find it hilarious to me that in this world you have to clear out your archaeological site before you can actually investigate it. But as far as additional research goes, it looks as though Hamvir's Rest is relatively low impact in terms of the story. It's an above-ground tomb located at the foot of the south side of the mountain range between White Run and Hjalmarch, northwest of Dustman's Cairn, of course. The nightshade grows in abundance in this place, amongst the grave markers, apparently. And according to the Elder Scrolls Wiki, there is a chance encounter with a headless horseman. Now, interestingly, the Headless Horseman does appear much further south on the map, I believe, if memory serves, south and east. But if you follow this Headless Horseman ghost, he will come to this site. He'll come here. And supposedly, though, this is not necessarily a reference. This is not as it were, this is not an ancient Nordic thing that you're seeing. It's much more likely to be a reference or an Easter egg for the game designers for the Headless Horseman in Sleepy Hollow. So, this site feels like a bit of an odyssey, and I wonder whether this will relate more closely to other sites. Obviously, the more that we see, but also the more that we see sites as they relate to each other. Because I mean, I suppose if you do have this contrast between this graveyard and Dustman's Cairn. Do you want to speculate on what the choices are that are being made, in so much as what do you think the height of the stones mean, for example?
Yeah, that's really interesting. The thing I was thinking about is I was trying to recall if I have ever seen any other place except for Falkreath that has a cemetery.
I'm not sure I have. I mean, I've definitely seen the ironmongery elsewhere in the world, and obviously, of course, in tombs we've seen a little bit of that. But as a site, it seems to be almost unique, which is interesting. There's also actually, interestingly, there's no direct reference to who Hamvir is either.
Which is rather rare for Skyrim.
Yeah. Now, some people have said have asked, for example, in fan discussions about this site, is Hamvir the Headless Horseman? But again, that's hard to say as well, because you would think they wouldn't be able to resist having a horse burial here as well. Surely there'd be a horse skeleton. So it's a curious one. It's a very pleasant site, though. And
it is. It's very pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose while we're here, it might be worthwhile trying to can we see any sort of sense of I don't know, social organisation or maybe implied seniority in any of these graves? How do they relate to each other? How do they relate to the Draugr at the back as we're coming in, I suppose?
I mean, common. Like, it could be status via gravestone, that the bigger the stone, the more important the person. But the graves also differ in shape, or in size, rather. So the smaller headstones seem to have smaller graves.
They do, yeah. So could it be
So
almost?
it could be indicating like child burials.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's there is a Victorian, I think, precedent for so the language of graveyards is endlessly fascinating, and when you
Oh, it's so
see
much fun.
when you see a like a pillar that's been carved to look as though it's been snapped in a
Hmm.
graveyard, that's meant to be someone whose life was cut short. Almost
Yeah.
a death that's seen as being unfair, I guess, in terms of that person's life.
Hmm.
But that said, there's no real sense that any of these graves are um, similarly, unfinished or sharply
No.
cut off in that way. They seem to be, each stone is rounded off, and also they're all
Hmm.
painted to the top and over the top of the
Yeah.
gravestones. Is there any difference in
I would
terms of?
say that
So go on.
they seem rather equal. Like, if we, the only thing that differs, I would say, is the size of the stonework on top of the grave itself
Mm,
and
mm,
the the grave marker.
mm,
So it could be that there are fairly simple and equal standing,
mhm, mhm.
but the the graves gravestones, that's a word, uh,
Sorry.
indicates indicates something else, like age, or, well, could be anything, but there is a uniformity to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose, but one of the impact, the effects that I get when we come into the site is this idea, well, this sensation that you are almost looking at a little. If these people were standing where they're buried, uh,
Hmm.
and also given that the guy at the back is standing facing you, it feels like a small war band or something, almost like
Yeah.
a military formation facing you. And
Yeah.
maybe that's meant to be the impact. These people are sort of guarding if we say this is Hamvir, for example, at the back,
Yeah.
who's become a Draugr. Um, just have interest to the right, as we're looking at the site. There seems to be stones sort of framing beyond the arch to the right. There is that actually a pathway that you can go along, or is that simply a framing device for these stones that do seem to have been lightly worked in the mountainside, don't they? Um, I just
You mean up here?
yeah. So just if you, yeah, that's it. And then to the left. Oh yeah, so it is a little bridgeway, which is not
Or
dis.
an aqueduct or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, not dissimilar to the sort of stuff that we see outside in the more elaborate ancient Nordic tombs. Um, uh, of course, I've forgotten what its name is now. The big one near Whiterun that we go to very early on in the game.
Um, Bleak Falls Barrow.
That's it, Bleak Falls Barrow. Yes, of course. I was just testing you, Liv. Just testing you.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, so
And
go ahead.
funny thing, you can see Dustman's Cairn when you stand up here.
You can, can't you? Well, you can, but also
Yeah.
at the same time, it is worth, in terms of, one of the things that obviously archaeologists are always looking out for is symmetry, and especially when it comes to which way things are facing. So, if are we currently above the Draugr's tomb? Do you think, looking out?
Yes, we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. There you go. So we have. Oh yeah, there you go. So we have an alignment in front of us of three graves heading towards the
Mm-hmm.
entrance. But interestingly, the entrance is actually off to the right, and it's actually taking us away to the right, almost if we were to say,
Mm-hmm.
towards the horse kind of thing. There's a huge edifice of stone to the left there that there's been no attempt to rework or to change,
Yeah.
and that's presumably because that's part of what is Dustman's cairn. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I, I, I wonder. if that is simply because I mean sometimes even for example I don't know you'll see like even Romans when they're building a straight road if the rock is too big they will go around the rock.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what we're looking at here? This is the sort of the landscape isn't going to be perfectly symmetrical for your purposes, so they kind of make it close as.
Could be. It could be. It could also be that Dustman Cairn is earlier than this gravesite, and they don't wish to disturb it, but they want to place the graves here for some reason.
Oh, that's an interesting point, actually. So this could be a slightly later form of burial for ancient Nords, perhaps. Interesting.
Or if they are connected to the cairn, but weren't allowed inside.
Yeah. Well, actually, it could be that all of these people are of a social rank that doesn't allow them in. Because obviously in Dustman's Cairn, we identified a little bit of an element of there seemingly being access by the living to the place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might have been that these people weren't allowed that sort of access, but also as well, I guess there's something that we see here in Britain, and I'm sure it's universal, where you have an older monument. Sometimes you will have people trying to bury themselves in association with that monument. So, for example, I guess most famously would be Stonehenge. There's lots of later Bronze Age individual burials in little mounds around the circle, almost kind of. Not necessarily. Yeah, well, and sometimes it's unclear as to whether or not these people. Sometimes it's hinted. For example, I think the Amesbury Archer is of the sort of type of person that seems to have come in from elsewhere. So some of these burials might not have been people who knew exactly what Stonehenge was, but they wanted to be buried there because it was clearly a special site. I don't think that's what's going on here, though. These guys clearly have a continuity in terms of certainly their art style. That said, though. It is painted, not carved, and could that not be a sort of a sign of decline? Because actually, even this structure that you're currently stood on, with the camera panning around you epically, even this is a less impressive form of what we see at for example, Bleak Falls Barrow.
It is.
Could this be actually the tail end of ancient Nordic practices? And so instead of grand tombs, they're making individual grave cuts. Instead of carvings, they're painting. Just a thought, maybe. Perhaps, yeah, this is on the way out, maybe.
Maybe. It could also be a question about resources, I think. Like, carving the whole of Dustman's Cairn takes a lot of effort and hence a lot of resources. If this is a gravesite of less people with less of an overflow of resources, then painting could be an alternative to, okay, we don't have the time or the effort or the money to spend on carving all of this.
Well, I mean, have we actually looked at the paintings closely in so much as the is there any difference between the smaller stones and the larger stones in terms of the patterns? Let's jump down. Whee! Okay, so sort of almost like a maze type things, curvy spirals and things. Yeah, okay.
What Hollywood would call Pictish.
Quite possibly. Yeah. If you wanted to. Okay.
And here's a smaller
version of a very similar pattern. Interesting. Now,
they seem very equal.
Sorry?
They seem rather equal.
They do. Certainly in terms of quality, and also in terms of the effect of the design. I think I quite like the dark red. It's almost like red ochre in that sense.
I was thinking blood, but
it could be blood, but the blood would wash away, Liv. Honestly.
Well, yes.
But then again, red ochre would as well. Actually,
it's a very blood red color.
It is a very blood red. Yeah, it's true. That's true. Okay, fair enough. And
I'm thinking, at least they want to simulate blood.
Yeah. Well, and also that's also one of the thoughts behind, for example, red ochre in graves as well.
Yeah.
It imbues the body with a certain vibrancy that it's lost in death. I wonder. I'm very tempted, from a sort of an art historian perspective, almost to go down the route of maybe the mazes are there to keep evil spirits away from the grave. They'll get wrapped up in the maze and they won't make it to the dead.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of thing. Because well, actually, it's funny because I remember having a conversation with a chap last year about witch marks and maze
Mm-hmm.
patterns found around those in caves, and how it's thought that they're designed to suck up and trap demons, for example, keep them away from the village.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's not a million miles away from this sort of thing.
No.
Um, also, look at if given that the overall quality of this is a little bit rough around the edges, this area, the sconces are quite high quality, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Mm.
And the sarcophagi that the Draugr is in is equal to those in Dustman's Cairn, I would say.
Yeah. So I would be tempted. Obviously, we have no proof, but also we have nothing to disprove this. I would be tempted to suggest that maybe this was either a group in the latter days of ancient Nordic culture, or just simply without resources, who wanted to be able to deposit their honoured Hamvir in Dustman's Cairn, but couldn't. Maybe it's too dangerous with all the Draugr. Maybe they just didn't have access. Maybe they couldn't gain access for social reasons or for magical reasons, and so they deposited the dead here as a sort of as an association. I'm quite happy with that as an interpretation, because again it is as I like the fact that it's a bit wonky. I mean, look at the way that the left pillar there sort of is just leaning compared to the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again, resources is indicated. We haven't. Just one last thing. We haven't actually checked the right hand side table or sarcophagus. Is that exactly the same as the one on the left? Is it?
It looks like it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And it's very curious that they are like caged in that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think this because the thing is, we do see, again, we have seen cages and I think we described it almost as like being airlocks, didn't we? In, for example, in Dustman's Cairn. So maybe there's a sense here that actually maybe those two people are individuals who are more likely to be dangerous Draugr, perhaps, or there's some sort of element of, and again, well, actually coming back to the artwork again, maybe entrapping evil influences or something like that. It would be interesting. It would be very interesting to see if there is anything that is similar to this elsewhere in the world, and compare the two, and also as you were saying, see if they are also in close proximity to seemingly earlier, grander, what's the word? Catacomb monuments. Yeah, interesting. And also, of course, all the nightshade around. That's an interesting thing as well. Presumably, in the chemistry of the game, do you know what nightshade does to you?
It's poison. It's really good for making poisons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I didn't want to just presume that, but yes, okay. So
it damage health and a few other properties.
Yeah. Well, according to the wiki, the average Nord keeps his distance from bright purple flowers nestled among dark leaves. It is exceedingly effective as pure poison. It can also be combined with other compounds to stiffen the joints as well. It is thus favoured amongst those who wish to disable their opponents in battle, and can be found coating the blades of many unsavoury characters in Skyrim. So could these plants be in place to slow down any Draugr that might escape?
Well, what I've noticed about the fauna of Skyrim is that nightshade is prevalent in places of death.
Yeah.
Falkreath, to take another big cemetery as an example, has also a ton of nightshade. And you find it especially around tombs. So I would say that it might be natural, and that the nightshade
grows out of the soil where the dead have been deposited.
Yeah.
Right.
That it flourishes among the dead.
I like that. That's quite metal.
Yeah, it is.
Lurches amongst the dead. Well, actually, and that's a compelling argument in so much as if you look at, it's not as though each grave has had a nightshade plant placed upon it.
No.
They are in seemingly relatively random pockets. So it's not. So if it was, for example, designed to, as with the cages and maybe the artwork, designed to keep or to slow down, stiffen the joints, as it were, of Draugr, that's not going to be effective. It's quite random. But if it just grows naturally out of, soil which has been fed by the blood of the dead, then interesting. I like it. Well, actually, because we do, we do have a plan as to where we're going to go next. But do you want to go to Falkreath next and compare that with this in our next survey?
Yes, maybe that would be good. I mean, we could. It would be interesting to take a look at a more quote-unquote regular burial place and compare present-day entombment to what we've seen so far.
Yeah, that could be good. Well, also it'd be interesting because I'm thinking about so there are other. There are other places where the dead are being prepared for the grave, which are a little bit more modern in this world. The names escape me, but I can think of where they are on the map. And maybe that could be something to briefly take an excursion and have a look at, because maybe that'd be worthwhile comparing, as it were, in-game modern burial practices with a graveyard like Falkreath, and then looking back at a place like Hamvir's Rest.
Absolutely.
Because that we may find, actually, given that we've identified some possible themes and reasons for this being here as it is, where it is, it may well be that modern burial practices have a common ancestry that reaches back through sites like this to places like Dustman's Cairn, potentially.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, this has been, I'd say relatively brief, but actually I think surprisingly interesting. I've enjoyed this one.
Me too.
Were you? Be honest. Were you surprised at how much we got out of this?
I am. I was like, well, great. We're going to do a walk. Nice.
No, I was. There was a reason I asked if we could take a look at this again, and I think it's it warranted us for another look. Just one more thing, just before we go. On the left-hand side, as we're looking at it, does the rock formation go down as it does on the right, or does it sort of blend into the mountain there? Just out of interest, it's not really a thematic thing. It looks like it sort of blends into the mountain, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, it cuts off.
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Which again, I think probably speaks of resources, because I think the people who built Bleak Falls, for example, would want that to round off in the same way and come down.
They would. They would have made a rampart or something going down and curving maybe around the tombs.
Instead of just going, oh, we can't do it. Oh, just wall it off. Yeah, interesting.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, it's fine. Just put him in there. I think this has been good. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching and for listening. Thank you for your lovely comments. Please do consider getting hold of a Skyrim Archaeological Survey patch. They're always good to have. And and also let us know. Do you want us to continue with the barrows, or do you mind if we take a little excursion, take a look at a couple more graveyards? Because I think there's something to see. There's definitely some comparisons to make there. Thank you for your time, Liv. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as ever, everyone, until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.